We had talked, well, you and Mr. Owens, had talked about narcissistic personality disorder earlier.
Yes,
And that is a recognized diagnosis in the DSM-5-TR.
that's right.
And there's 9 of those, correct? 9 traits?
Are you talking about, you're talking about the criterion of narcissistic personality disorder? Yes.
Like page 761 on your hard copy?
Thank you. All right,
Was I close? I have a digital copy.
760, but
Okay.
that's fine.
One of the criteria is has a grandiose sense of self-importance, for example, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements, correct?
Yes.
2 is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, correct?
Yes.
3, belief that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people, or institutions, correct?
So 3, just caveat, it says believes, not belief, but the rest of what you said I agree with is the criteria.
4, requires excessive admiration.
Yes.
5, has a sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations, correct?
Yes.
6 is interpersonally exploitive, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends, correct?
Is interpersonally exploitative. I agree.
7, lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, correct?
Yes.
8, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her, correct?
Yes.
9, shows arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitudes.
Yes.
Now, you believe that she has traits of that disorder, correct?
Yes.
Grandiose sense of self-importance?
There are indications that she feels like that or has expressed that before.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
Preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love?
No.
You remember going to the state attorney's office on October 1st of 2024 and giving a deposition?
I do.
And it was in front of a court reporter like Madam Court Reporter here?
Yes.
And you swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, correct?
Yes.
And referring to page 89, lines 18 through 20. Let me know when you're ready. Are you ready?
Yes.
Did you give the following answer to the following question? Preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love? And your answer was yes?
I did answer yes there.
She does not, in your estimation, does not believe that she is special and unique and can only associate with high-status people, correct?
No.
Does not require excessive admiration, correct?
Correct.
Does have a sense of entitlement,
Yes.
is not interpersonally exploitive,
Correct. She is not.
and when discussing whether or not she lacked empathy or was unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of others, you indicated that that might be the case, but it's not intentional.
In other words, she's not aware if she's inconveniencing others.
So there was 3 of those traits, correct?
Yes.
Not 5, which would be required, correct? For a diagnosis of the personality disorder.
If that were the correct diagnosis, you would need 5.
All right. During your conversations with Ms. Boone, the defendant in this case, she explained to you that cheating to her means when Mr. Torres would look at pornography, correct?
Correct.
Not a real-life woman, correct?
No, not that he was engaging in sexual intercourse with actual women.
Part of the records that you did not review were the text messages that were part of the phone extraction of her phone device, correct?
That's right.
You indicated in your conversation with Mr. Owens that some of the traits that are commonly seen in abusers would be control, jealousy, easily angered.
Those could be, yes.
What other traits just common for abusers?
Being a person who segregates their victim away from other sources of support, somebody that exhibits coercive control, meaning that they would prevent the person from engaging in activities that would be independent, so restricting their ability to have independent, like life, job, money, things like that, that would be supportive of them being left, for instance. Other things would be using emotional expressions like rage to cause a physiological reaction in another person. So those could be additional descriptions.
Specifically, the materials you reviewed. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Paperwork from prior cases involving Mr. Torres and Ms. Boone.
Yes,
Medical records for Mr. Torres.
that's right.
The medical and Aspire records for Ms. Boone that we've discussed.
Yes,
The crime scene photos from the incident in February.
that's right.
Pages 1 through 413 in discovery in this case.
Right.
A photograph of a suitcase and 2 videos involving a suitcase,
That's right.
and additional videos on that phone, correct?
Yes,
Such as baseball bat smashing the TV?
that's part of it. Yes.
And then did you review any other videos where there's conversations between Ms. Boone and Mr. Torres?
Yes.
One prior 911 call?
Yes.
Now, today, you had indicated that you had reviewed the photographs from some prior incidents of violence, correct?
Yes.
When is it that you did that? Is that recently?
No, there are photos included with the
The prior case packages?
case packages. Thank you. I'm not sure what to call it, so.
That's fine.
All right.
All right, and did you review any body-worn camera from those prior case packages?
No, I did not. I didn't have that.
Anything else that you reviewed that I've not covered?
Are you speaking of documents only?
Yes, yes, materials other than your 9 visits with Ms. Boone.
All right. Just checking with the
That's fine.
pointers I
I
prepared
just
for
wanna make
today. I don't know if, I guess that would be part of the discovery. The investigative report is within those 413 pages.
Okay. Did you interview anybody else personally besides Ms. Boone?
Yes.
Who else did you personally interview?
Melissa Sexton?
All right, anybody else?
No,
You didn't interview Brian Boone, correct?
I did not.
You did not interview their child in common, correct?
No,
And you didn't review the phone text messages extracted from her device, correct?
no, I didn't.
Did you review any records from the jail?
No,
And,
Judge.
yes.
The objection is sustained in part and overruled in part.
You testified earlier, in the normal course of practice of forensic psychology and psychiatry, you all do rely upon the diagnoses of other experts, correct?
You can inform my opinion, yes.
And you have not reviewed any electronic communications in the form of text regarding Ms. Boone's case, correct?
No, I did not.
Or recorded phone calls of any type, correct?
No, other than that.
Now, let's talk about the February 23rd of 2020. She told you that they didn't really have anything going on to do that particular day, correct?
Yes.
It was a Sunday, correct?
Yes.
Did some chores, and then as a reward, they could rest after doing those chores, correct?
Right.
She indicated to you that she and Mr. Torres did not begin drinking till about 4 p.m., correct?
I'll have to reference.
Page 36 of your deposition, if you care to use that.
Great, thank you. 36?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm with you. Around 4 p.m.
And you reviewed the crime scene photos of this case, correct?
I did.
That included receipts for some purchases that were made at Publix on February 22nd and 23rd, correct?
That's right.
And one of those receipts was a purchase for a 1.5 liter bottle of Woodbridge Chardonnay at 12:17 p.m. on February 23rd, correct?
Yes.
Did you question her about the inconsistency of them having purchased a bottle of wine at 12:17 that afternoon and not start drinking until 4 p.m.?
No.
And did she tell you that they had any wine left over from the day before that they consumed that day?
At some point, I'm not sure if it was the day that I was going through this line by line with you in my deposition, but I am aware, yes, that there was an unfinished bottle of wine from some other date.
And then, as the receipt showed, there was 2 additional bottles of 1.5 liters of wine purchased at 12:17 p.m. and about 5:30 p.m. on the 23rd, correct?
Right.
And were you aware of approximately how much Ms. Boone, the defendant, weighed at the time of this offense, February 23rd, 2020?
Around 100 pounds.
And in the first 413 pages of discovery, I believe, was the autopsy report, correct?
Right.
And so you're aware that Mr. Torres was 103 pounds at his death?
Yes.
Do you take into account this alcohol consumption when evaluating what Ms. Boone is telling you about the events of the day?
Yes.
Did she tell you whether or not she was intoxicated by the amount of alcohol she consumed that day?
Please silence your cell phone. You may proceed.
So she did not describe herself as intoxicated originally when we discussed this. So
So the answer is no. She did not describe herself as intoxicated.
intoxicated, right?
Hypothetically, if she had told the jury that she was intoxicated at the time of the offense, would that affect your evaluation of her credibility in the history she provided you?
No, because that was also my opinion.
Did she indicate to you, in describing the events of February 23rd, 2020, that there was any point in time she just simply did not remember?
Yes.
And what points in time were those?
So she did not remember taking the videos of the suitcase, or the incident in the suitcase, until she was at the interrogation room, I guess, and then they were going through them with her. then she recalled that.
I'm talking about specifically with you. Did she indicate that there were any portions of the night that, or day or night, that she did not remember?
I can't recall anything specifically right now.
Hypothetically, if she had indicated to the jury that she did not remember the 9 or 10 minutes immediately preceding the first video being taken, would that be inconsistent with what she told you then?
No,
Well, she didn't indicate to you that she forgot any part of the night, right?
right, she just didn't say that, so.
Would it affect your evaluation of what she told you about the events of February 23rd, 2020, if she hypothetically has testified that she did not remember 10 minutes before the videos?
Not really, no, because the event and the course of events that she narrated to me occurred over several hours. So when you interview somebody about circumstances of an offense, it's the usual for someone to not remember every single minute for hours at a time. I can't imagine that anybody's memory could hold that much unless they have like photographic memory or something.
I'm not asking about hours and hours, itemization of her day's events. We're talking about the 20 minutes of the offense. Does that affect the weight that you give her history she provided you? It's just yes or no.
No,
Now, what she indicated to you was the day had been going well. It was fun and games, correct?
yes.
Conflict-free?
To her, she said it was a good day, so
Okay.
that's what she told me.
She said it was a good day.
Yes,
And there comes a point in time where the activities turn toward hide and seek, correct?
yes,
And she goes up to the shower,
right,
and when she comes down from the shower, that's when Mr. Torres is in this suitcase, correct?
getting into it.
And she goes over to the suitcase and zips it, correct?
Yes.
And did she describe whether it was 100% zipped to you or just a certain percentage?
She said that it wasn't zipped all the way.
Okay. And still then, that was funny to the two of them at first, correct?
That's right.
And then there came a point in time where Mr. Torres was getting mad about being zipped in the suitcase.
She told me that he was getting mad. Yes,
And that, in turn, made her mad.
that's right.
What Mr. Torres was saying was, I can't breathe, correct?
That is what's recorded on the video.
Well, I'm asking you about what you reported her saying.
Well, what made her mad was not that he was saying he couldn't breathe. It's what he was saying that was making her mad.
Well, what else was he saying?
At the time, she said that he said something that was making her mad. And so that's the extent of what we talked about at that moment.
So you didn't elaborate what something was that made her mad, correct?
Right. She said he said something that made her mad, and that started making her mad.
You didn't find it important to learn what specifically he said that made her mad, correct?
I don't agree that I didn't find it important
Okay. Then explain. Why wouldn't you ask that question?
because as a person who is traumatized is describing their experience as a trained clinician, you will allow open-ended discussion of that experience. And so it's not an interrogation. You don't go asking confrontational questions at the time of their first narration.
Well, you had 9 visits with her. Did you follow up on your 9th visit?
I asked her different questions about
Did you ever ask
being
her?
confrontational.
Did you ever ask her specifically in any of your 9 visits with her what it was that he said that made her mad?
No,
She never described him doing anything to make her mad, but it was words, correct?
right.
And once she got mad, she decided that she was going to leave him in there for 2 minutes.
That's right.
Not 3, not 1, but 2, correct?
That's what she said.
And the reason she was doing that was because she wanted him to understand how it feels to be choked and what she had experienced.
That's right.
Did you ask her why she didn't let him out of the suitcase after 2 minutes?
Yes, I did actually ask her that.
And what did she say?
Well, she thought that he could get out himself. That's one thing. She said that when she was able to unzip it, it was not some significant thing. She was able to unzip it easily. So she said it never occurred to her that he couldn't get out.
You may proceed.
And you reviewed the still photograph of the suitcase as well as the 2 videos.
Right.
And did you understand what the metadata or what the timestamps were for each of those items?
I'm sure when I reviewed it, I saw the timestamp. Yeah.
Would you agree that 20 minutes is 10 times as long as 2 minutes?
I would.
And if Mr. Torres had not been able to get himself out of the suitcase within 20 minutes, she didn't indicate that she let him out, correct?
She did not.
She described to you, Ms. Boone being the she, that she was helpful to the police.
Yes.
Do you agree with that assessment of that she was helpful to the police?
In the sense that she was having conversations with them without counsel, I would consider that helpful to the police.
Do you think lying to the police is helpful to the police's investigation?
No.
Do you agree that she was not truthful with them?
Yes, I think that I would agree with that.
And when she described getting Mr. Torres out of the suitcase, she described stretching his little legs?
Yes.
And she stated to you there was no fight that day, correct?
That's right.
Just wanted him to be uncomfortable.
I need to clarify. Physical fight. Though.
Right.
Yes.
Just wanted him to be uncomfortable,
Yes.
correct? And then there was a description of a bat and her using it to nudge, right?
Poke.
Poke. And so, do we agree that that means like poking out like this as opposed to swinging it like you're a baseball hitter?
I would agree with you.
And you reviewed the autopsy report, correct?
I believe so.
Did you get an opportunity to review the autopsy photos?
Yes.
Did you question her when she said that she only poked him with the bat?
No.
Not in any of your 9 visits?
Did I question her about whether, can you just repeat the question? I want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Fine. Did you ever, in considering the autopsy report and the autopsy photographs that you reviewed,
Yes.
when she said that she nudged or poked with the baseball bat, did you ever question her about that, given the severity of his injuries?
So to answer correctly, I did question her
What did she say?
about how she used the bat.
Okay.
She reiterated that she poked and she gestured what she meant. So I did question her about that.
And did you have any questions about that history she relayed to you, given the other evidence in this case that you reviewed?
Just in contrast to the interrogation video. So that,
It didn't contrast to the autopsy photographs or report?
Judge, I object.
Approach. You may proceed.
Did she indicate all this nudging or poking with the bat was done while he was inside the suitcase?
Yes.
She never told you that there was any nudging or poking with the bat when he was outside the suitcase?
Correct.
She indicated that she ended up flipping the suitcase over face down?
That's right.
Did she tell you about Mr. Torres calling his brother earlier that evening?
No.
Did she ever give you a history about a loud boom occurring inside of her townhouse that evening?
No.
And you never had the opportunity, obviously, to interview Mr. Torres about these things, correct?
Of course not. No.
No other questions?
Any redirect examination?
Briefly, Judge.
Yes, sir.
The state attorney talked to you about power and control, that an abusive partner will use power and control over the victim in a intimate partner violence situation.
Yes.
Threatening someone's dogs, is that an example of someone using control?
Yes.
Taking car keys from the other party, is that an example of control?
If they're withholding, yes.
Taking a phone and withholding a phone,
Yes.
a debit card,
Yes.
destroying a home, TVs, putting holes in the wall,
Yes.
not helping pay the rent and other bills?
So I would say that that could be withholding, that could go under coercive control of another person.
What about violating a court order to have no contact with the person?
Yes.
That's all the questions.
Thank you. Can this witness be released?
As far as the state is concerned, thank you.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. Just allow me a moment to pack up.
Collect all your stuff, ma'am. No worries.
Sorry.
No apologies necessary. Yes. All right, members of the jury, it is 4:01. At this point in time, we're going to go ahead and take that afternoon break. I got a couple things I got to address with counsel as well, so maybe a little bit longer, but we'll bring you back in as promptly as possible. Again, same instruction I've given you before. Please don't conduct any independent investigation or research as the person, places, things, or charge involved in this case, and do not have any conversations amongst yourselves or anyone else about that. And we'll bring you back in as promptly as possible. Thank you.
All right.
Y'all can be seated. Let's go ahead and take a recess, a comfort break for any of us, and then we can address any argument with regard to the any other evidence that the defense may be seeking. Let's come back here in about 10 minutes, so 4:13, okay? All right, thank you. We'll be in a short recess. State of Florida versus Sarah. Back on the record, case number 2020 CF 2603, State of Florida versus Sarah Boone. Appearances for the state.
Suitcase on behalf of the state.
William J.
Defense.
James Owens for the defense.
Tony Henderson for Sarah Boone. Kevin Beck for Sarah Boone.
All right. Ms. Boone is seated at counsel's table wearing the same dark gray suit and maroon blouse from this morning. Mr. Owens, are there any other matters we need to address before you rest in the presence of our jury?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Judge, there's two orders that I'm going to be requesting the court to take judicial notice of under 90.202 sub 6. And they're orders of no contact. I have copies of the certified copies of the orders. May I approach?
Yes. State, have you seen them?
Doesn't change my position.
Understand, but you have seen them.
I have not.
You have not seen them. Okay.
Doesn't change my position.
Understood. Okay. You can bring them on up. Thank you, sir. Court has been provided no contact orders issued in case number 2019 MM 5062 on or about June 16, 2019, and a no contact order in case number 2019 MM 5114 issued on or about June 19, 2019. Both cases styled State of Florida versus Torres George Jr. Let me hear any argument as to the judicial notice from you, Mr. Henderson.
Judge, I think they're relevant. I think just from the testimony of Region Director Dr. Harper, saying that an element of control, and control is talked about greatly by the state when I point out things hypothetically that they refer to. They refer to them as hypothetically. However, they refer to things that they're developing on this Boone. These show that there were in fact orders, and the orders were for no contact. So these are elements of control in relation to George Torres.
Okay. Response.
So in regards to the judicial notice aspect, we don't dispute that that can be a substitute for authenticity. However, they're not relevant, they're not admissible. They contain statements that were made by people who are not testifying. just because an expert relies on something doesn't mean that it's admissible. What happened during redirect with Mr. Owens was he was asking, what are the hypothetical things that we rely upon in making these determinations as an expert about whether there's battered spouse syndrome or not. So one of the many inadmissible things that he mentioned was pretrial orders with no contact. So it's fine. The expert can certainly rely on the fact that there may have been pretrial contact orders or no contact orders that were involved in this case, and she considered that. That doesn't make them admissible. There has been testimony, I believe, from Ms. Boone that there was pretrial no contact orders and violations of them. It's not a fact in dispute. It just that doesn't mean that the paperwork comes in as evidence. So that's our objection: is it's irrelevant and hearsay. Just because an expert relies on inadmissible evidence doesn't make it admissible.
What's your response to hearsay?
Judge, I think under the, as to hearsay, I think the statute takes care of that itself, because it says that the court can take judicial notice. So that's the foundationary part. And it's not hearsay, it's an order of the court. We're in a case where we've gotten in evidence of past domestic abuse. There was evidence of it, started with the state, about control. And these are things of control. And I'm sure the state's going to, in rebuttal, they're going to come up with things that they feel either by body cam or any other evidence that shows her exercising control. This shows Mr. Torres exercising control. It is very relevant.
But how's it not hearsay? Just because it's a court record, it's still out of court statement. It's certainly being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, no contact order.
Judge, that's why we have the thing that the court could take judicial notice of. There are certain things that court.
But the case law says you can't utilize judicial notice to get around hearsay. I know 9202 says that I may take judicial notice. 9203 says that upon sufficient notice being provided, which the state is conceding based on their argument, the court shall take judicial notice of items identified in 9202. But my question is, the case law, as identified in Professor Earhart's treatise, specifically says in Dufour v. State, 69 Southern 3rd, 235, which specifically talks about notice of judicial documents in a court file, that doesn't get you around hearsay. So what's your response?
Let me go through hearsay in my mind again.
You're fine. Take your time.
Judge,
Yes.
I'll start this way first. One of the exceptions to the hearsay rule is business records exception. So if it's a business record and it's kept in a normal course of business, then someone can come in and lay the foundational things for the business record exceptions to the hearsay rule. However, in this case, that would not be needed if the court takes judicial notice of it. That eliminates the necessity to do a business record in that foundation, because the court, under the statute 90.2026, can take judicial notice of court orders. This is a court order, it's certified, I think it's an exception to the hearsay rule. Also, I think the probative value of these documents outweighs any prejudicial effect.
Any other argument?
No, Your Honor.
Any other argument, State?
The fact that there was a pretrial court order of no contact between them is going to come in. I mean, on one of the body-worn cameras, Mr. Torres is like, well, you know, the court said I couldn't, but she said I could come. And I believe she testified to that during her examination. My objection is to the paper and the grounds that I've argued.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. State v. Mobley, 98 Southern 3rd, 124 by the Florida 5th District Court of Appeal, cited in 2012, says that there's a procedure that specifically needs to be followed for judicial notice, as set forth in 9202 and 9203. State is conceding that although there's not a writing, they're not objecting to the judicial notice concept. They're objecting to the evidentiary bases. I do find that it is relevant, but the problem is I have with hearsay. And the court, in relying on the Florida Supreme Court decision in Dufour, D-U-F-O-U-R v. State, 69 Southern 3rd, 235, at pinpoint 253, by the Florida Supreme Court in 2011, which states, while the court may take judicial notice of documents in a court file which were properly placed there, this notice would not make the contents of the documents admissible if they were subject to challenge, such as when a document is protected by privilege or constitutes hearsay. It is an out-of-court statement that is being offered for the truth, to wit, it is a no-contact order, and the requisite requirements for a business record under 98036 subsection A have not been met, nor has there been a certificate from the custodian of records as to those things, as required by section 6, paragraph C, and the timeliness of a certification. So I cannot accept judicial notice of these two documents, even though the state is not conceding the procedure for judicial notice. I am sustaining the state's objection as to hearsay under the grounds and the exceptions that you have offered.
Judge, we do have the clerk of court subpoenaed. I don't know where they are. I assume they're somewhere in this building. I believe they sent some message to us back before the hurricane about what date they were to come, and we said to be continued. So we haven't gotten back up with them yet. So it would take me some time to check on that. It's 4:30.
Was the subpoena still for this time period?
Yes, I believe it was a 3-week period,
Okay,
but we haven't followed back up with them. This came up
sure.
late.
I'll give you an opportunity to do that.
I don't know whether you could just go ahead and send them to home for the evening, and let me see if we could find the clerk maybe in the morning, and then we could rest in the morning, and then the state has Dr. Werner. It's probably going to take me a little bit to
Yeah,
find.
I'll give you that opportunity, absolutely.
Right now?
If you want to, sure. If you want to try to do it now or do it tomorrow, I'll leave it to you. Because I can't imagine it would take long if we're able to get a records custodian or a person to lay the foundation. I can't imagine it would take that long.
Aren't they in the building?
Yes? Third floor? Sure.
I suggest we go ahead and let the jury go. It's 4:30.
Okay.
I don't know how long it's going to take them to do that, but we could present that in the morning and then rest in the morning, and then they could.
All right, that works for me.
Judge, I'm not going to make some poor employee come in and do that. I was conceding the authenticity. I don't understand the relevance of it coming in.
Are you now withdrawing your hearsay objection?
Well, I still believe it's hearsay, but I think it's cured by, it's a public record and it's stamped and all that stuff.
I know, but no one's made that argument yet.
I don't want to punish some poor clerk.
Okay.
I won't object to them coming in, but it's a slippery slope for other records. we'll see what we do as well.
Okay. All right. So the state is still maintaining its hearsay objection. I do find that it is relevant.
I don't make the clerk.
So then what do you want to do, Mr. J?
I'm stipulating to, if the hangup for the court and the defendant is that they believe a clerk of the court needs to come in and testify, I'm conceding that issue so that person does not have to do whatever that issue is.
Okay. All right. Fine. Then based on the court, on the concession by the defense, by the state, excuse me, do you have any other objections with regard to these two non-contact orders? Mr. J?
No more objections.
Okay. For the reasons previously articulated, I do find it's relevant. The state has withdrawn its hearsay objection. Do you want these as a composite or individual?
Individually.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you pre-mark them, and then we'll identify them, please? The no contact order in 2019 MM 5062, dated June 16, 2019, has been pre-marked as AB. And the no contact order in 19 MM 5114, dated June 19th, 2019, is dated as AC. Mr. Owens, you can approach. Let's just tackle a couple other housekeeping matters that we have. You can move those in when our jury returns into evidence. Are there any other witnesses, evidence, or testimony, sir, that you're going to be offering this afternoon?
I don't believe so, but we're intending on resting either this afternoon or first thing in the morning, but we want some time to talk to Sarah Boone and explain to her, why we think we should rest, not call any further witnesses, not introduce any other exhibits, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with her about what our strategy is. So we need a little bit of time. I don't know if you want to go ahead and excuse the jury for the night and then have us come back in the morning and do that colloquy with the defendant, but we do need some time with her.
Okay. All right. So then here's what we'll do. I'll bring in the jury and I'll excuse them. You can save those pieces of paper and you can move them into evidence tomorrow morning and then present. That'll work. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll bring the jury back at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and you can continue with your evidence presentation at that time, including but not limited to calling any additional witnesses. Court can have any further colloquy with the defense at that time. The state then can put on its rebuttal case. State, how long do you anticipate ballparking it for the court, your rebuttal case?
I don't believe Dr. Werner will take long on our part. I'm not sure how long it will take on their part. And then there's about...
How long is that for your part?
I'm not going to hold you to it, Mr. J.
Probably less than 30.
How long do you anticipate your cross being? And ballpark it. Again, I won't hold you to it.
If his
Just,
direct is 30, my cross is probably going to be 30.
okay, what else do you have to present?
And then there will be about 2 hours of videos from body-worn camera and from the phone extraction. And then reading a good bit of phone text messages into the record.
Separate and apart from the 2-hour video presentation. Okay, got it. All right. Okay, so that's going to take us in tomorrow afternoon. Are we going to be in a position for the state to rest its rebuttal case tomorrow and proceed with closings, or are we going to proceed with closings Friday morning after had the opportunity to have a full Not that we would not have a full charging conference, but after having a charging conference Thursday afternoon with regard to the jury instructions.
I just don't know how long. I think all the instructions are pretty relatively simple and straightforward, except for 3.6.
Agreed? 3.6F, I agree.
It's not going to be simple or straightforward in any way.
The instruction is complicated. I agree.
And the special jury instruction on battered spouse that we're going to be requesting.
Okay.
There's different courts, Judge, here in Florida that have used the special instructions. There's different courts in other states that have used a different instruction. We've looked at a bunch of them, so I don't know what this court is going to be inclined to do if court would be so inclined to give a special instruction on battered spouse, and whether or not you want to consider one of the local courts, the Palm Beach County case that I mentioned before with Dr. Brennan. There was a special instruction in that case. And then we've got some from other states. I don't know what the state's position is going to be on that, so we may.
Has a draft of that been circulated yet?
Not to the court.
Okay, all right. All right, so
Or the state.
here's what we're going to do. Okay, let's just see how long the rebuttal case takes. And then if we have to do closings Friday morning, we'll have to do closings Friday morning. I'd rather go through and spend the time to make sure that we're all on the same page with regard to the instructions, especially due to the complicated nature of 3.6F. With regard to those, the court will have Ms. Barrios email you all. She just started her drive back to Kissimmee, so it might come a little bit later this evening. I will have Ms. Barrios email to you all the red line that the court has worked on so far of the jury instructions provided by the state. The defense is to provide its markup of the 3.6F and 3.6G instructions and any other defensive instructions that the defense seeks to have read to the jury.
Before 9 o'clock in the morning?
I think so. That gives the state the opportunity during the lunch hour to review them in advance of our charging conference.
I'll have it done before 9.
Okay.
Judge?
Yes, sir.
There was one thing. The state had filed a motion requesting a special instruction as to, I think it goes to voluntariness. I read their motion and the proposed instruction. I have no objection to it.
Okay, all right. So just so the record's clear, we're referring to the state's request for special jury instruction regarding Florida Criminal Standard Jury Instruction 3.9B, defendant's statements filed October 22, 2024. The provision that the state seeks to add to the 3.9B instruction reads as follows. Law enforcement is not legally required to ask a suspect whether he or she wants to talk to law enforcement after Miranda warnings are read to a suspect. This is, however, one of the factors you may consider whether the defendant's statements were voluntarily made. The state, state, have I read that correctly?
I believe so, without reading it myself.
And defense, you have no objection?
No objection, Judge. And it's my understanding that's going to, there's already the standard instruction. That's an add-on to the standard.
It's just a matter of where y'all want it. So I will add this to the red line to be sent out this afternoon. Ms. Boone, I want to have a couple other conversations with you, ma'am. Again, I don't want to know specifics of anything that you or your attorneys have discussed, just whether or not you've had those discussions. Did you hear the court read the proposed additional language to the jury instruction about your statements?
Just now?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please read it one more time?
I can. So just to give you some background, ma'am, there's a form instruction. It's 3.9B, and it talks about how the jury is to consider your statements that were read to them and provided in evidence through the course of the trial. And that they're to consider the voluntariness of those statements and whether they were coerced. The state is seeking to add the following language to that instruction. Law enforcement is not legally required to ask a suspect whether he or she wants to talk to law enforcement after Miranda warnings are read to a suspect. This is, however, one of the factors you may consider whether the defendant's statements were voluntarily made. Do you understand that portion of the instruction?
Yes.
Do you have any questions about it?
No.
Okay. Have you had conversations with your attorneys about the proposed additional language that I just read to you?
Not yet.
Oh. Okay. Let's go ahead and have those conversations tonight when y'all break and we can go over this tomorrow when we have the charging conference. But I'll go ahead and add it to the red line for the purposes of our discussion tomorrow.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. Anything else, State, we need to address?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring our panel back in, and we'll tell them we'll commence tomorrow with additional evidence and testimony at 9 a.m.
All rise, jury's entered.
State, do you recognize our jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, do you recognize our jury?
I do.
Thank you. Y'all can be seated. Members of the jury, good late afternoon, early evening, I think. Again, could you just raise those hands, confirm that you complied with the court's instructions? All right, record reflect all hands have been raised. Members of the jury, it's 4:43. We're going to go ahead and break for the evening. I'm going to ask you to be back here at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll continue with evidence and testimony presentation by the defense, and then we'll proceed accordingly thereafter. I want to read you the same instruction that I've read you multiple times over the last week, and I beg your forgiveness as you hear it again, but I just have to keep reminding you. Jurors, you must not conduct any investigation on your own. This includes reading newspapers, watching television, or using a computer, cell phone, the internet, any electronic device, or any other means at all to get information related to this case or the people and places involved in this case. This applies whether you are in the courthouse, at home, or anywhere else. You must not visit places mentioned in the trial or use the internet to look at maps or pictures to see any place discussed during the trial. Jurors, do not watch local news or read local newspapers. Jurors must not have discussions of any sort with friends, family members, or even your fellow jurors about the case or the people and places involved. So do not let anyone make comments to you or ask questions about the trial. I want to stress again that just as you must not talk about this case face-to-face, you must not talk about this case by using an electronic device. You must not use phones, computers, or other electronic devices to communicate. Do not send or accept any messages related to this case or your jury service. Do not discuss this case or ask for advice by any means at all, including posting information on an internet website, chat room, or blog. With that, members of the jury, again, I thank you for your time, your sacrifice, and your attentiveness in this matter, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Y'all can be seated. Thank you. Anything else we need to discuss, State, before we go into recess? Defense, anything else?
No, sir.
All right, we'll see y'all tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you very much. Court's off the record.
that comes out. It's like a built-in cabinet and stuff there. They sprayed all of that. They sprayed the floor. There was nothing on there. Nothing. Then they sprayed downstairs in the basement. There's a wall that separates, that kind of goes down there, that where you go around and go down the hall to the bedroom and the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. And then there's it's like where the stairwell goes down. They sprayed that entire wall. They sprayed the bar top, and they sprayed the floor all down there. There's nothing on it, nothing illuminated. But that's what they're talking about. That's the 3 places that they're talking about. And there was nothing on it because we were in there on Sunday. There was nothing there.
Was
mean,
there
it's like they
anything
told
in
me.
the 3 phone conversations about any of that? You and I,
What 3 phones?
that night that they're talking about, that July the 3rd, that we talked 3 times,
Yeah.
which to them was so out of the ordinary.
No.
What did we talk about?
We talked about fucking.
Which is our normal conversation.
Which is our normal conversation.
And
My
I'm ready to
grandkids
get back
and
to it.
Yeah. And Ella and Addie were coming, and, I was going to Lake Lanier the next day, and, you were going up to the lake with Andrea. That's all we talked about.
And that's what I said.
That's all we talked about.
Where are you?
But I honestly, in my gut feeling, I think that you are the only one that they've been able to, quote, talk to. They're not talking to anybody else, as far as I know. I mean, they could be talking to Chris and Scott every damn day, for all I know. But that's what I'm thinking, is that you are the only one that they're talking to, and they're trying to scare you into saying, hey, she did it. I mean, that's what Manny said. Do you trust him? I said, I trust him with my life. He said, then okay. He said, then...
Baby, do you know who did it? Who killed him?
No, I do not. No,
I mean, somebody killed him.
no,
Who could have done it?
I don't know. I mean, Chad said today, he said, Melody, Amanda and I on our way to go get pizza and coming home from getting pizza last night. He said, we did it as outside person looking in, He said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Scott did it. He said that there's too many peculiarities when it comes to Scott. There's too many. But Manny's right. You're the only one that's talking to him still. So I don't know whether he told Bobby not for you all not to talk to them anymore.
I haven't talked back to Bobby yet.
I had wondered.
Maybe do
because
you
he said that
think
he
if
was-
Scott did it, that would you have not heard it? Known it? I mean...
Okay, let me tell you this, and you tell me whether this is correct or not. Back some time ago, we had a goat that had to be put down. She had given birth. I had worked and worked and worked with her, and I finally got the little baby delivered, and of course it was stillborn. Well, she never really quit bleeding and, whatever. And she was, and Scott put her down. And he told me he was going to put her down. And I said, oh, let me leave. Before you do that. I don't want to be here when you do that. Well, later on, he came over there and he said, well, I'm fixing to do away with that goat. And I said, you didn't put her down. He said, I walked up and put the gun right up to her. He said, in that way, there is no noise. True or not true?
I have no idea. I have never done that. So I don't know.
Well, we're not going to Google it.
No. No, I have never done that.
So that's what makes me wonder. Of course, now, on the flip side to that, there was enough fireworks and stuff going off that night into, well after midnight. And probably they were still going off at 1 o'clock in the morning. People shooting fireworks and stuff. Now, if I'm upstairs in, like, my, the upstairs bathroom, and stuff, you can't hear anything up there.
Well, do you know where you were when you talked to me?
Upstairs.
I was in bed. I know where I was at.
Right. No, because I had taken the sheets off of Ellen Addie's, the big bed up there, because when Emily and Amanda and them, when Emily and Chris and Livia had been there, I had slept upstairs, me and the dogs had. So, and I had just made that bed back. And I had gone up there and had stripped off the sheets and had put clean sheets. I was putting clean sheets and stuff on the bed up there. Of course, I was nasty from being outside, all day working and stuff. I had, took a bath up there. I vacuumed upstairs. All that kind of stuff. Of course, Manny still believes that there is no gunshot. He thinks that that's all coming from the fact that Scott told him there was a missing gun. Which Manny wanted to know. He said, have they asked in any of this time to see any of your guns?
No. They just asked if I knew that all my guns were in place, and I said, yes, they are. And they are. I've checked every one of them.
Right. He said if they had thought that there was a gunshot, he said they would be taking his guns and at least looking at them. I said, well, they're doing a good job of scaring the shit out of us.
Ain't that the truth? I can't even fucking breathe.
So I don't think I breathed from the time that you
Good day to
called and
have
said
your
you were
heart
going
checked,
down.
isn't it?
Seriously. Hell, I think we're having ours checked on how did they end it? I'm asking all these questions so when I talk to Manny again that I can tell him what did they, Did they just get up and walk out? What did they do?
They said they would see me soon.
How were they dressed today?
Polo shirts.
Okay. Were they the Cherokee County ones?
Yeah, it's the same two guys.
Okay. Well, I didn't know whether they would have on just,
Last time
What's
they
that
had
Cherokee County
they
on?
had on suits. These were polo.
Right.
Oh yeah, they had like an embroidered badge, I guess, on their polo
Right.
shirts.
Right. But like they said, Melody, that's not how they do things. I said, Manny, I'm not used to doing this. She said, you need to calm down. I said, oh, there is no calm in this, Manny. I said, but he said, before when they went up there, did they tell him that they were coming? And I said, yeah, because he had it set up to meet at the lawyer's office. He said, and this time they just showed up out of the blue, and I said, it's my understanding that they did. He said, but they went to his lawyer's office first. I said, yeah. Is that correct?
To me, all this just doesn't, it doesn't seem, I understand a scare tactic, but it doesn't seem right for them to lie about all of this stuff. I mean, why would they have, say they put the stuff on the wall and it had been cleaned up and there was blood there, and say that, there was here's a picture of a rib with a bullet in it, that he'd been shot. I mean, I don't, again, I don't understand.
Right. Well, he said that, well, of course, now, LeBron, of course, he used to be a cop, and, of course, now he's been, he's an investigator, for whatever. And he said, first of all, Melody, he said, I can tell you that, according to the pictures, that, you're not going to have all other bones gone and a rib there with a gunshot wound in it. It ain't going to happen. He said, it's not going to happen. He said, I could have understood if it was he said, first of all, that it's not going to be in the rib. He said, it's not going to happen. And he said, I could understand if it was in a hip or if it was in like a big, he said, but Melody, there was nothing left of there was nothing left. I mean, could you see it when you looked at it? Could you see a rib bone with a slug in it?
I could see a bone with it. I couldn't tell. It was. Let me think about the picture. So a rib bone would have been the curved bone. So yes, that's what it looked like.
See, even I can tell you from when being down there at that burn pile, there was nothing like that left.
I don't know.
And
I
now
wasn't
you would have
there.
been right. No, you weren't there. Now the thing about that is the fact, like he said, Melody, you don't even know. They're taking him pictures and showing. He said they could have taken a picture of anything and to be showing him. I mean,
Right.
And he said, there's certain, he said, I've been doing this way too long. He said, I know what that they're doing. He said, like they said, if they were going to arrest him, they're not going to show up and tell him they're going to. They would have done it. They would have already had all that in place. They would have already had, but that was what he said. He said, why does he have a lawyer? And I said, well, small town, He said, I understand,
Well, I guess my only thought is, what if that is what they have? What if they do have that? What does that mean for us? I mean,
Right.
we, you know,
Well, that's the
I
thing
don't
of it is I understand. I know you're scared shitless, and so am I, darling. So am I. But I know that there was no fight in a house. There was no struggle in a house. There's nothing there. That's the one thing in the world that I'm positive about. Which, I mean, you know, when you stop and you breathe and you think about it,
I can't.
I know. But one thing about it is that I trust Manny in the fact that I hope he knows what he's talking about. I mean, I really and truly think that I think he does.
So, who found the remains? That's what they call them. Who found the remains?
Scott did.
And did you get in the burn pile?
No,
Did anybody get in the
I
burn
didn't.
pile?
Only Scott.
Did he poke around in it?
He did.
Did he handle stuff?
Yes, he did.
And they didn't crawl his ass for that?
Find that weird? Crawl his ass for that? They did not. Or no, I don't think that they did. I don't know it if they did. But even the paramedics that arrived
You
first
did
on the...
go, I mean, when he found it, you did go to the burn pile, so you saw there wasn't nothing or not much or what? I mean, was there
Me
probably
and
like there was
Amanda...
something else?
Right. Me and Amanda and Chris and Scott and Cameron and Addison were all around that burn pile. Every one of us.
Okay.
And, I mean, we'd all been standing there. I mean, even me and Amanda and Scott had been picking up wood and chunking it back into the burn pile. I mean, you know, because it was all still smoldering. You know, throwing it back into the burn pile. And then Scott goes over, starts digging through there, picks up what, and I know that this is graphic and whatever, but you need to know it. He picked up what he said was Gary's face. Picked it up, looked at it, and put it back down in there. And dug around to the rest of the pieces and stuff. Picked it up, turned it over, took a stick, dug around in the burn pile, everything. And then starts freaking out. That's what it was.
Wow.
Yeah. So see, you've got, okay, let me tell you this. Let me walk you through what all happened. When Amanda got there that morning, I walked out and sat down on the front porch, and we were discussing what we're going to do that day, whether we're going to go get something to eat there, what we're going to do. She wanted to go up to the outlets because Cameron was wanting a new backpack and going up there to do that. And Addison said, yeah, that was what she wanted to do, you know. And then they said, well, they wanted to go ride on the RTV. And they said something about Big Daddy and couldn't find him, that they had looked for him that morning. Well, then about that time, Scott comes walking up on the sidewalk to the front porch and sat, and Amanda's sitting on the steps, and I don't know, I was in one of the rocking chairs. And Scott comes up, and I said, have you seen your daddy? And he said, no. And I said, so he's not over at the barn? And he said, no. And I said, well, the girls were looking for him, and we can't find him. His immediate response was, there's a gun missing. And he jumps up and runs through goes in the house. And I didn't realize I was like, what? What are you, what gun? What, and Amanda's like going, what's he doing? What's he even talking about? Still, there was no panic with any of us except for Scott. So Scott heads down to the basement, and then Scott comes back out and gets in his truck and heads back over to the barn. Well, me and Amanda go in the house, and we looked through the house and walked out, and Scott comes back at some point. I don't know who got on the RTV, but anyway, Amanda and I walked, through the house and whatever, and then out through the basement door, and we walked out to the edge of the woods and down by the pond, and just, still, nobody's in a panic, nobody's in a whatever. She called his cell phone, it immediately went to voicemail. She sent him an email message on both of his emails, on his personal email and on his company email. And she said that, and said, hey, look, we're looking for you, whatever. Still, nobody's in a panic. Nobody's in, whatever, except for Scott. Well, then Chris comes up, and I'm going to get my two girls before the shit, he said, I'm going to get my daughter and leave here before the shit hits the fan. What shit's going to hit the fan, Chris? Well, I'm getting my daughter and I'm getting out of here. So that makes me lead to think that he has talked to Scott. So he's already on his way to get out of and get out of there. I said, I didn't think your dad, and I remember asking her, I didn't think your daddy was coming to get you until, this afternoon. He said, I don't know. He said, he's being Chris. He's just flipping out about stuff. So then Scott comes over on the RTV, and Amanda she said, I'm going to go back. She said, I'm going over to the barn and look to see what, so she supposed, I know, got there, I don't know whether she went across the dam or whether she walked the driveway, don't know. But anyway, I hopped on the RTV with Scott. We rode back over to the shed over there, and he pointed out that the tractor was not in its proper spot. The tractor was not under the shed. It was back behind the shed over by the compost pile. Well, the tractor's not in the right spot. Well, I didn't put the tractor there, Scott. So from there, then we rode up the driveway onto the road of the property so that you can look down on the property from up there. We rode up there and turned around and came back. And then, I'm not trying to think how that we did, but anyway, all of it, me and Amanda and Scott were over there at that burn pile when he started pilfering through it. And Amanda started walking off back to the house. And that's when he said, when he told me, that's human remains in that burn pile. I've seen him 100 times. And I'm calling 911. But he's walking away from me as he's saying that. And me going, what are you saying? Well, Amanda heard it more than I did because he was walking toward Amanda. Well, he called 911. He would not let any of us hear him when he called 911. And he went and met them at the front of the driveway, down by the driveway and the road, at the entrance to the property, and stopped them and talked to them for what seemed like an eternity. And then he rode in the paramedics truck up to there. Well, they get out, and they had, of course, they said it was protocol. They got out with a defibrillator and a backboard and, another bag and, that kind of stuff. And he told me and Amanda, you two do not go down there. I said, you're not going to stop me from going anywhere on my property. So me and the paramedics and Scott walked back to the burn pile. And once again, he reached down and picked it up and showed it to him. And then laid it back down. So then they radioed in something, and about that time the sheriff showed up. Of course, they're only 3 miles from my house, so it didn't take long to get there. They radioed back, somebody, and the sheriff got there. And from that, then I'm the one who actually talked to Detective Hayes first, and he kind of got, from me, okay, what shook down today? What was the thing of today? And I told him just what that I told you. He wanted to know about Gary's medications, where they were, anything that I had on his medical history. I went in there and got that. It was in Gary's office in a file folder. I went and got him what I had, and he did not take it. I mean, I have since found it, and they did not take that. It was still there. They did take his medication, and they took his wallet, and they took his cell phone. And then the next time that I really talked to any of them was that night when me and Amanda and Chad and Scott went down to the free home, which I guess it's a police station. It's not really a police station. It's like a conference room, and, they got a couple of computers and stuff in there. It's not a real police station. And we went down there, and they asked the same thing that they had asked me that day. Okay, go through today. Go through yesterday. Go through, this morning. And I told him the exact same thing all over again. And he said, well, you're telling the exact same thing because it's the truth. That's what happened. So then at 1:15, they said, well, what would you say if we told you that there was a gunshot wound to a rib? So I just sat there and just looked at him, and he said, well, who's going to go out there and tell your children? Me or you? And I said, well, I'm not going to go out there and tell them that because I don't know that it's fact. I'm going by what you're telling me. And they had already told, somebody in the midst of all of it had already told me they will know nothing until they take the remains down to GBI headquarters. You will know nothing. So that stuck in my brain that when he was telling me that, I said, look, you're just telling me that, I don't know that for a fact. Oh, so you know that there wasn't? I don't know anything. That's what I told him. I don't know anything. Well, your son says that there's a gun missing. Okay. Nobody seems to know anything about this gun. I said, he is a gun freak. I said, he likes guns. He lives and breathes guns. He, whatever. He said, well,
listen to me, okay?
Okay.
We need to be on the same page,
Okay.
all right? And so I don't want to be confused, but I remember you telling me he's on the burn pile.
Mm-hmm.
Were you lying about Scott? You think what? You tell me what happened.
I can tell you that there should not have been as much damage as there was done.
I don't know what that means.
That body should not have been burned up.
So, who burned it up?
I think Scott did.
Okay.
I think Scott did. Like Amanda said, I think that that Scott had the perfect crime, the perfect whatever, the perfect, you know.
Except you saw him there, so did you try to not get Scott in trouble?
No. No, I'm not covering for Scott. No, and I told them everything that I have just told you, that, you know, because that's what that they started in. You're covering for Scott. I said, look, I don't know anything, you know. I saw Scott come in that night. He said, do you know if he had been there, you know? I don't know, because I said, I don't even know what time it was that Scott came in. I said, because you've got my phone. So I don't know what time it is that I talked to Scott. He said, well, do you know what Scott did from the time he came home until, I said, because he called me about 6:30 the next day and said he was at the house and for me to open up the front door. And I said, I walked out front, and I said, I opened up the front door, and I said, then I went to my truck that was in the garage, got my debit card, and handed it to him.
All right. What I'm saying is that night, the 3rd, that we supposedly talked, you know, so much, and you said he was on the burn pile. Were you just trying to cover for Scott, or what?
No.
No. Okay.
Now, I honestly don't know what Scott did or anything. I don't know. Do I have speculation? Yes, I do.
Okay. So, did you tell me that night, the 3rd, that he was on the burn pile?
I don't remember. I think all that I remember saying to you was that Gary has started the burn pile.
Okay. See, I don't remember. I was trying to put it all together, and that was what I was coming up with, but I don't remember what was said about Gary because I had some drinks, and I had some Advil PM, and, you know, like I said, we talked normal stuff, and I listened, and
Right.
it just kind of in and out.
Did you ever tell them that you had drinks and
Yeah.
Advil PM? Okay. Okay. Well, I guess the thing of it is, like Manny said, don't give them any more information than, you know. Of course, they're not going to be talking to me. So that's the thing of it is, as Manny said, he's the only one that's talking to him. Well, we think that he's the only one that's talking to him because not any of, you know, us are supposed to be, you know, talking to him. So, you know, he said that's why that they're, you know. Are you still sitting at Planet Fitness?
I am.
Have you driven back through town to, well, I would think if they'd shown back up that Bobby would have called you. Were they sitting in his office when you got there?
Yes. I don't know what to say or not to say, you know, if we both get locked up.
You don't say anything. You say nothing. I mean, that's what Manny kept saying. Has he made a statement to them? I said, Bobby, I don't know. I honestly don't. I mean, Manny, I said, I honestly don't know what, you know. Of course, I guess his,
ask questions, and like I told him, I haven't done anything. I wasn't down there.
right, right. And like he said, Melody, we've been in your house. There is no blood. Nothing illuminated. I've seen pictures. Nothing is illuminated. They have nothing. They're telling you, he said, it is, I mean, you know, I said, yeah, I can, I can preach this all day long, but, you know, at the end of the day, we're still scared shitless. He said, somehow or the other, he said, do you remember, they started with you that first night, or not for the first night, but on that Friday, that there was a big hole in your wall. He said, Melody, what was the hole? I said, it was a nail
clean
hole.
it up good? Did you clean up good? Did you clean up?
There was nothing to clean up.
Okay.
There was nothing to clean up. The big hole that they're talking about that was in the wall was a nail hole. All this stuff that they say that is all over the floor. They even said that there was a, quote, where a bullet had hit my floor in my basement. That there was a big, you know, well, they had it taped. They did. Of course, that floor in the basement is hand scraped and hand whatever. It looks like old barnwood. It's made into the floor. We found 50 of the pieces in that floor that had the exact same thing, you know. So there was no, you know, I mean, his investigator took pictures of everything that they took pictures of. He said, we have our pictures, they have their pictures. We have them to compare, you know. He said, Melody, they're lying. He said, this is what they do. He said, you were there with us. You walked through that house just like we did. He said, you saw it. I said, I know. I said, but it's also easy for them, you know, for me to get a phone call. And I said, and he doesn't know because he's never been there. It's easy for them to show up with pictures.
Because, you know, again, what I said.
Right. And he said they could also be trying to get him to say, no, that's not her house. He said, we don't know that the pictures that they showed him were of your house, do we? I said, well, no. I said, no, we don't. He said, okay.
Yeah, they made a big deal about that luminous stuff. You know.
Right. Right. But it was still there when Manny.
What if that made it where it didn't glow anymore after they put that on it? I don't know. You know.
Well, it's all, you know, he said, Melody, it would have still been glowing when we came through that house. And he said, it wasn't. I said, there were 2 places on the carpet going up the steps that they had said something about. And he said, if they had thought that it was anything, they would have cut that carpet out. But they didn't. He said, have you done it? I said, no, it's still right there, you know. He said, we did a test on it. He said, LeBron said it was wine that had been spilled. He said, Melody, if they had thought you had cleaned up everything, he said, they would have taken mops and towels and all that kind of stuff. He said, they didn't do it. They're all still there. He said, you had towels in your washing machine, remember? He said, they're all still there. He said, Melody, you had shoes sitting by your front door. They're still there. And it's true.
I can't even see.
Maybe not. I'm wondering if did they leave any of them with your attorney? Leave any kind of documentation?
I don't know.
Call him back and ask him if they left anything.
He said he would call me. He would try to call me sometime tonight.
Okay.
So, all right. I haven't eaten or drank or anything.
Me either.
Or peed or pooped or nothing.
Okay, let me give you Amanda's cell phone number, okay?
Okay.
Because Amanda's going to be here. Well, she gets off at 7, and she'll be here, and I will be with her. So I'm going to put
Okay.
this phone up. But
Okay.
if anything happens, then that way you're not calling my other one. But you can always get me on her cell phone number, okay?
Okay.
I've put it all out on the line with her. I've told her, you know.
Okay.
Her number is 678.
Okay.
5.
Get to the,
I don't know where it is.
just skip it a couple of seconds. I can
Jump
here,
forward.
I can see if that.
Oh, well, maybe not. I'll just jump. There we go. Oh.
Let me give you tab number 2.
Anything happens, I will do that. All right.
Okay. If you can eat you something,
Yeah.
why don't you go ahead and right now take you either a Benadryl or take you 1 Advil PM.
Yeah.
That way it will kind of take you down, help make you breathe a little bit better.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'm going to get with Amanda and see if she talked to Manny, okay?
Okay.
And see what he told her. And I will let you know as soon as I talk to her.
Okay.
Okay.
I love you.
I love you.
Okay.
Do that for me, okay?
I will. I promise.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. My hand on your waist.
Hand on your waist, on me.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
All right, break for 15 minutes.
4/15/2017.
Was there anything beyond 2017 in this DVR?
No,
And this is 2155 Purcell Lane?
it is.
And do you know who that is?
That's Gary Farris.
State's now publishing Hayes 51. Is this that same angle from Hayes 53?
It is.
Does it appear to have night vision on
It
in
does.
this video?
Yes.
What is the title there down at the bottom?
Front door.
Who is that?
Melody Farris.
State's publishing Hayes 52. Does this appear to be the same angle that the two previous clips are from?
Yes.
And what's the date on the top left corner?
April 30th, 2017.
Thank you. Who's that just walked out the front door?
That's Melody Farris.
And who's approaching from the sidewalk?
Scott Farris.
You heard the recordings of Miss Farris and Mr. Barton that we just played prior to lunch, correct?
Yes.
Now, when she was talking to you and Sergeant Kuykendall, it was actually Melody who pointed out Mr. Farris's remains to Scott.
That's correct.
And in the beginning of that interview, you were asking her about Scott Farris and Chris Farris.
Correct.
And basically, she was telling you he wasn't going to cut his gravy train off in reference to the boys.
Correct.
And the gravy train is who?
Gary Farris.
Thank you, Sergeant. That's all I have for you.
What's that?
Go as long as you intend to, and if we need, when we get past 5:15 or so, come to a logical conclusion. Unless you think we can wrap up by 5:30.
I don't know.
I'm not anticipating that it's gonna happen. Just
You never know. You never know. We're all pretty tired. All right. Detective Hayes. I don't think I need to introduce myself. We've been sitting here together now for 2.5 weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the beginning of your involvement in this case.
Okay.
And so that was roughly 1:30 on the 5th, correct?
Roughly, yes.
Roughly. And what were you doing earlier in the day?
Just a normal day at the office. We just finished lunch. We usually went to lunch around 11:30. So.
What did the call sound like? I mean, you gave a little bit of a rendition, but what did you think you were coming up on?
Coming up to an accident that someone had a medical episode and fallen into a brush fire.
And did you and Kuykendall typically work together back then?
Yes.
So, like every case, would you have called yourselves partners? Because I think you said you guys were not partners.
We would help each other. So we were the two people in the day shift, what we called the person's unit. It was just me and him. That was it. So if we needed help and the other wasn't busy, our desks were next to. I think I sat in front of him. He was right behind me. So.
Okay. But you weren't his boss.
Correct.
Okay. But you were, in this case, Hands looked at you and said, "You're going to do this one."
Correct.
You're the lead.
Correct.
How quickly was that from the time you responded? Was Hands already there?
Yeah, it happened on scene. Kuykendall and I had shown up. We called back to the office and said, this is not, this is more than what we thought it was. It appears to be more than what we thought it was. And that's when more people started coming.
So you and Hands were there, or you were there before basically all of Cherokee County got there. Y'all were some of the first responding from Cherokee SO.
Uniform patrols on scene of the Free Home Precinct. They're the local responders. We were coming all the way from Woodstock. That's where our office is, the Criminal Investigation Office. So we were the first members of criminal investigations that arrived on scene.
Okay. Why did he pick you to be the lead?
I don't know.
What was the normal way of assigning cases back then?
If it was a case that Uniform Patrol had taken a report on and CID response wasn't required, Sergeant Hands, Detective Kuykendall, or myself, we would come in every morning and we would review cases, decide which cases to screen, and that means those don't have enough solvability factors. We're not going to work it. So we screen those. We kind of get those off the list, and then you go through the list and decide what can be worked, what needs to be prioritized, and things along those lines. If it's an active scene, we respond and the supervisor makes a decision on the scene.
So you guys get there, you're assigned, but you'd already been down to the burn pile.
Yes.
Right. And what did you tell, you're the one that called in and said, look, we think this is more than simply an accident.
I don't remember if I called him or Kuykendall. I believe Kuykendall probably called back to the South Annex.
He's the one that said this is more than an accident, Kuykendall.
We both looked at it and we're like, oh, this is not what we expected to see when we got here, so we need more eyes on scene. We need to let our supervisors know.
Right. What training at that point, which I know now, obviously since this case, you probably learned a lot about this kind of stuff, but at that point, what training did you have in being...
I did help with it was a murder-suicide where the defendant, or the suspect, there was no defendant, burned the house down on top of the family. So I had responded to that scene. I had seen bodies that had been burned up in a fire. As far as formal training, actually being taught in a class, I don't think I had any at the time. Correct.
Just in the field, you had that one case, and then this case came along.
Correct.
And now you have more formal training than probably you ever could have imagined.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so you then, tell me about you kind of parsing apart the people that you saw. Who did you see first? The first person that you spoke to that day in the family?
I walked up and, most of the family that was there was hanging out in the driveway area. I saw them, didn't know who they were at first, walked past them, to go talk to my law enforcement partners that were on the scene to figure out.
Pinion was there?
Kind of size. He wasn't there yet.
Okay.
So at the time, Pinion was my captain, so he was the highest ranking, he was a CID commander. So he would have been doing whatever he was doing. He may have been at the office, I don't recall. But you follow the chain of command. We would call back, our direct supervisor was Sergeant Hands. We told him what we had, then he would make his notifications above him.
And above him was Pinion?
Ultimately, above him was Pinion, but between him and Pinion would have been Lieutenant Clark.
Lieutenant who?
Clark, Daryl Clark.
All right. Was he on scene?
At some point, yes, he came out there.
Okay. Now, did Pinion came? He did come out.
He did.
All right. And did Pinion talk to Scott before Kuykendall did?
I don't know.
From the reports, I mean, because you're the head guy on this case, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've been sitting here for the whole time, and we're going to talk a lot about every aspect of this. And I'm going to do everything I can. I don't think I'm going to get this finished by 5:30 today, but I'm going to try. But you ultimately, the buck stops with you, correct?
Not necessarily. I was named the lead detective, which in my eyes meant, when I hate to call it fun, but when the crime scene, when everything's over and all the work on the back end happens, the search warrants and all that, I'm the guy that gets to sit on the stand and talk about it all at the end, basically. So on the scene, there was multiple lieutenants, multiple sergeants, a captain, all them. They outranked me. So even though I'm lead detective, if I say I think we need to do this and they say otherwise, I have to do what they tell me.
And that's kind of what's come across, I think, to the jury is really nobody can put their finger on who's really in charge of this investigation. Would you say that's fair?
I can see how it would come across that way, yes.
Okay. All right, so how did it get decided that you would go spend, which obviously you didn't know how long you were going to talk to Melody, because it was within 30 minutes of you arriving that you sat down on the porch and talked to her. Mm-hmm. How did you and Kuykendall say, well, I'll talk to Melody, you talk to Scott? I
don't recall exactly how the decision was made. It would have been between Detective Kuykendall and I, or Sergeant Hands, of, you go talk to this person, you go talk to this person. Obviously, Melody and Scott were the people that lived on the property, so I believe that's why they were chosen to speak with them first.
Okay. So, when was the first time, which the jury has heard your whole recording, which, I mean, there's, hours, obviously, of these recordings with Melody. But when did you and Kuykendall reconvene after he took Scott and set Scott in the car and you got done with Melody? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly when. It would have been sometime after that.
Okay, what do you remember Kuykendall said to you?
I remember hearing about, more information about the gun that Scott was saying was missing.
So you said more information. Prior to that, had any of the on-scene witnesses said, this guy Scott Farris says there's a gun missing?
I think Scott was telling the initial arriving officers as they were getting there.
So you'd already heard that?
Yes.
Before you sat down and talked to Melody?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And I don't think you brought any of that up with her in the first interview, right?
I don't recall if I did. I don't think I did.
All right. So let's go back to Kuykendall. So Kuykendall, he kind of goes in, gets him in the car, talks to him. Jury's heard that, or at least his rendition of that and Scott's rendition of that. But what did he tell you, Kuykendall?
Just a brief overview of I don't remember his exact words of what Scott had told him. He would have told me what he felt was important from his conversation that I should know, is the best way I can put it. So definitely, I recall learning more about this missing gun, like what piece of furniture, the story about it being a couple weeks prior when he was down there with the cable guy, looking for the remote.
I'm going to ask you this. I mean, did it not seem a little weird? I mean, you showed up. There's a body that's burned to the point of not being recognizable. Don't really necessarily know who it is at that point, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you've got Scott Farris over here talking about a bullet or a gun.
Correct.
Okay. Did you not think that was kind of odd?
It caught me by surprise. Yeah, it caught my attention.
Like no evidence in the house has been found yet of, which, by the way, when did you guys get the search warrant?
I don't believe I was on scene. I did not author the first couple of search warrants. It was later that evening. I believe it was after the first bullet was found.
The search warrants. What's that now?
I believe it was after the first bullet was found in the rib cage. Would have been the search warrant to get inside the house.
Okay. So you guys weren't searching the house before the bullet was found?
Not inside the house that I recall.
Because wasn't the bullet found, we're talking about towards midnight, and Detective Kuykendall had already been in the house, and he'd been on the floor, and he'd found the bullet while you were talking to Melody at one point at the precinct.
So we're talking about two different bullets. The bullet I was referring to was the one found in the rib bone that was out in the fire pit. That was found in the evening, because I know interviewed Melody the second time at about 9:30 at the Freeholm Precinct, and I had discovered that prior to that interview. The bullet in the basement floor was found after that.
So that's your testimony.
Yes.
Okay. So, but you were made aware of the bullet in the rib cage while you were talking to Melody at the 9:30, or what time?
No, it was before that.
Okay.
That was the reason for the second interview. We had new information that we needed to,
Right. Just trying to get our bullets right. Which one you knew about first?
the rib cage.
Rib cage bullet. All right.
Yes.
But let's go back to, when did you leave the scene at Purcell Lane?
As in to go to Freeholm to interview Melody?
Yeah.
It would have been a little before meeting her there.
Okay. So
We were on the scene when we discussed going there to be interviewed because she was still hanging out in the driveway.
Okay. Was the sun still up?
Was the sun still up?
Yeah, that's just a good way to tell. I mean, it's summertime.
Yeah, I don't recall if the sun was still up or not. It was around that dusk, getting around that dusk time based off of the time of my interview with her.
All right. So y'all agreed to go over, and you've explained all that to the jury, but where was Kuykendall at that time?
I don't know. He was on the scene somewhere doing whatever he had been assigned to do.
All right. Going in the house?
I'm assuming.
That's when he found the bullet?
At some point, yes.
Okay. You've been sitting here. This is very unique that well, it is and it isn't, but you're the only witness that has sat here throughout this entire investigation because there's an exception that allows you to do that.
Yes.
As you've seen more and more and more of the on-scene investigation, you would agree with me that that did not go according to plan.
I don't know what the initial plan was, so I don't know if it went according to plan or not.
Well, you're not a crime scene expert.
That's correct.
That's not what you do.
That's correct.
But you knew that these guys, I mean, as we've all been sitting here learning throughout this case, that you've got crime scene supplements, detectives supplement crime scene, and they all kind of have to work together towards one goal, right?
Correct.
But you would agree with me that almost immediately, this crime scene kind of devolved into chaos.
I wouldn't call it chaos. It's definitely expansive. It was more than we typically handle.
Sure. And you had, I believe, Detective Kuykendall. Were you there when he was dispatched to go stand at the tractor?
I would have been on scene. I don't recall hearing it or seeing it done.
Right. Is it not unusual for a detective who's supposed to be talking to witnesses that all of a sudden this detective, he's going to go over here and stand watch next to a tractor?
Unusual?
I don't know. You tell me.
I mean, at the time, I don't know exactly how many people were on scene or who directed him to do it, but I wouldn't say it would be unusual. I've stood and held crime scenes if I wasn't the lead detective multiple times.
Okay. But he's already interviewed Scott, and then you guys, in that afternoon, were interviewing Chris, Emily shows up, Amanda, Melody, all these people, and somebody thought it was a good idea for Detective Kuykendall to go stand next to a tractor?
I'm assuming so. Yes.
Okay. Who was that?
I don't know. It wasn't me.
I mean, at one point, and I have to think, again, we've all been on this case for years, but sometimes I think, what was Hayes thinking at this moment? If I look over and if Michael Ray is over here trying to guard a tractor and we're in the middle of a very serious trial, I would be kind of angry about that. Were you? When you realized your partner's essentially standing next to a tractor?
No. I had multiple detectives and investigators on scene that day that were doing different things, so I don't even think like I told you, I don't even think I noticed him missing. I assumed he was out doing whatever he was told.
Okay. By somebody else, and we don't know who that was.
Correct.
All right.
I don't know who it is.
What's that?
I don't know who it was.
Right.
Who told
and
me.
that's fine. And that's all I'm going for. If you don't know, you don't know. When did you first walk in the house? The actual house?
I don't recall. It may have been that next morning.
Is that when you found the shirt?
No, I found the shirt on Saturday or Sunday. I don't recall exactly the
recall?
day. No.
Okay.
It was, we were closing down what we call closing down the search warrant. We were getting ready to release the house.
Okay. All right, so I'll come back. So you didn't find the shirt that day, so I'm going to come back to the shirt. I've actually got the shirt pulled. I'm going to have that ready for the jury to see, and the shoes. But was that the first time you went in the house?
Was that the first
Like
time?
Saturday, Sunday?
No, that would not have been the first time, no.
Would it have been Friday, or did you go into the house at all on Thursday?
I believe it would have been Friday.
Okay. So after all these interviews with Melody, it's after that you went into the house for the first time.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, because all your interviews with Melody Farris were completed by lunch on Friday, right?
Yes.
That would be the 6th.
Correct.
Friday the 6th. We're done. There's never another interview. That's it.
Right.
Okay. All right. So going back to the crime scene itself. When did you begin to actually learn what they were finding on the crime scene or not finding?
Throughout the case. You could hear in the interviews that we played.
Sound like you're getting phone calls and texts.
Phone calls, text messages, hey, step out, stuff like that.
I mean, that's kind of annoying, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You're over here trying to do your job, and you're trying to interview a witness, and somebody's constantly distracting you.
Yes.
And it seemed like it was different people.
At times.
All right. What are you supposed to do in that situation, Hayes?
What am I supposed to do?
Right. What do you do when you're getting all this conflicting information? How do you parse through that?
Deal with it as it comes the best I can. You heard my phone going off in the interview at times. I'd ignore stuff, and then the phone would keep ringing, and I'd step out and answer. And some of it was, hey, what is she saying? Is there anything else we need? Asking for information from me based off of what I'm doing. Other was passing information along to me.
Okay. And that was information about what? What was the primary bit of information that was being passed along to you while you were interviewing Melody Farris?
Which time?
The first time.
The first interview?
The first interview.
I don't recall being interrupted too many times the first interview. We were on scene. We had just initially gotten there. I think most of the text messages, I say at the end of it, it's likely crime scene was getting
Which
there.
sergeant was that?
It would have been Sergeant Hands. He was
Okay.
my sergeant at the
Okay.
time. Yeah. I forgot where I was. He likely, I said in my interview, here, there goes the crime scene truck. They just arrived, stuff like that. So,
By the way, where did that crime scene, did it just drive back there all the way down?
its initial response, I don't recall. At some point, it was back down in the backyard, not, I'd say halfway between the back of the house and the burn pile. So their equipment was close.
Did it drive kind of through the grass there? Back on the, you guys are sitting, and let me pull this up instead of us sitting here and talking about where you may have been. Were y'all sitting on this porch?
The bottom patio on the concrete?
So below that?
Below that porch,
Okay.
yes. Outside of, I believe it was Gary's office door.
So down here?
Correct.
Okay. See if I can find a better photo of that. Behind these trees is where you guys would have sat?
Yes, near the back.
Right there.
There you go. Yep.
Were you in the swing or was Melody?
Melody was in swing.
All right. So did the crime scene truck drive down through the grass right here?
No.
Where did it drive?
It went down the driveway. When you hear me in my interview say there's a crime scene truck,
Okay.
I heard something coming, turned around and looked. It was coming down the driveway. I believe it may have made a wrong turn and went up towards the
Chicken
barn.
coops?
No, towards the barn and people were kind of waving it to come back to the house. But after it got in the driveway, I don't know because I continued to interview Melody.
Okay. Did you ever see it drive down to the burn pile itself?
I did not
Okay.
see it drop down there. No.
Did you ever go back down to the burn pile after your interview with Melody?
I did.
All right. What was going on down there?
Crime scene was there. Phone calls were being made because, again, it's an expansive scene. I think our crime scene unit looked at it and realized, well, we've never handled anything like this either. We need to get an expert or someone that knows more of what they're doing on the phone.
Do you know if Shaw was already on the scene at that point?
I don't recall if he came with a crime scene truck or drove separate. I don't. A lot of people showed up during my interview with Melody. When I compare from when I was told to go interview her, interviewed her for a little over an hour, and then came back, there was a lot more people on scene.
Okay. But Shaw, do you know that he was on scene yet by that point?
I don't recall exactly when here. I believe he was. He was one of the first responding crime scene supervisor, so he'd be out there to size it up.
So that's kind of leading into my next question. So
Okay.
he gets assigned to be crime scene supervisor, and you are detective, right?
Correct.
So how much were you two communicating?
Throughout the night, periodically.
Okay, can you remember and explain that to the jury?
And again, I was fortunate enough to get to hear him testify, and I know what he did. His knowledge was around the burn pile. So he was the crime scene unit supervisor on a regular day. He's a sergeant, so everything kind of went through him. But on this day, he was over the burn pile area. So any information he would have relayed to me would have came from that burn pile area. How he assigned his unit, his people to different areas of the house, or who was supervising them, or who was in charge of what, I can't answer that.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Did you ever, that afternoon, walk over to the barn?
On the afternoon of the 5th.
Thursday the 5th.
I don't recall if it was on the 5th. I know I walked over there, and it was daytime. It was hot.
The first day you guys arrived.
Right.
You don't remember if you walked over there or not?
I don't.
Okay. So the sum total of what you did on the scene on the 5th was talk to Melody. Did you talk to anybody else that you can remember?
Yes.
Who?
Amanda Farris.
Talk about that interview, if you don't mind.
It was short. I spoke with her, started asking her questions. I didn't know she'd already been interviewed by somebody else, so it was very short.
Okay. What have you ever gathered or learned from Amanda? I mean, that's one of the 4 Farris children, correct?
Correct.
All right. And she's not testified at this time, correct?
Correct.
All right. So what have you learned from Amanda? She was on scene, right?
She was on scene. I didn't learn much because I spoke with her briefly. She basically said I was here to pick up my fiance's daughter, Cameron, which is Chad Bruce's daughter. And when she got there, she learned her dad was missing. They started looking for him, found what they found in the burn pile, and she basically made the comment, I already told, I think it was Sergeant Hans this, and I said, I didn't know you'd already been interviewed. She was upset. I wasn't going to make her go back through, what she saw right then. So I ended the interview and moved on, and I never spoke to her again.
I've been meaning to ask you this, because we have sat here and listened to these recordings forever, and that was before body cams really came into which did detectives use body cams even now?
Yes.
Y'all put body cams on to interview people.
It depends. So some people do. I believe what the policy states, if you're going to a pre-planned, like if you're going to go serve a search warrant, detectives are supposed to wear them.
Sure.
But natural deaths, things like that, you can record however you want.
Okay. But to interview folks, you typically wouldn't want to put a camera on and just have it right in their face, right?
It would depend.
Because in the interview room back at the sheriff's office, the cameras aren't out in the open; they're kind of concealed, right?
That's correct.
All right. So tell me how you put would you just walk up and have it already on and in your pocket, or how would you do that?
I typically carried a portfolio type thing. I would open that so I could write and hold it in my hand under it. Sometimes I'd lay it on the pad. Just depend on the circumstance. Sometimes I'd put it on the table. It just depends on the situation.
Would your interviewee typically see the recorder or not?
Not always. It would depend.
Okay. So in this case, with Melody, for example, do you remember what you did with the recorder?
I don't recall. I believe in the first interview with her on the back patio, I probably kept it in my padfolio or
In the phone.
Yeah, it was on me. I wasn't necessarily setting it on the table so she could see it.
Right, and that's common practice, right?
Yes.
And the reason the jury's like, why are you asking this again, John Luke? I don't know that most people are aware that detectives don't get their recorder out and sit it on the table.
Correct.
Typically, you keep it in your pocket.
Some people will. I don't like mine in my pocket because if it moves around on the mic, like when I wrote this one, it'll bust your eardrums if you got headphones on listening to your recording later. So, and sometimes it muffles the sound. So I typically never put mine in my pocket. It would be in my hand, under the padfolio, something like that.
But concealed.
Yes.
That's part of the practice.
Yes.
Right. And that's not against the rules.
Correct.
It's kind of highly encouraged, correct?
Correct.
Right. And did you record your interview with Amanda?
I believe I did, yes.
All right. Did you ever gather from Amanda or anybody else on the scene that she was bringing up the thing Scott was saying about a missing gun? Do you remember that at all?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did you ever get a chance to take a break during this first 12 hours from 1 afternoon?
Really, I think it's pizza to the scene to eat, and just between interviews and watching the crime scene do what they were doing, trying to drink water, but never go home and sleep for 3 hours break now.
Did you actually take any breaks at all in the first 24 hours? Any sleep?
Yeah, after I interviewed Miss Farris the second time, I interviewed Scott Farris after her. I believe I went home for a few hours, but I was back early the next morning to interview Miss Farris again.
Did you, so it's safe to say that you spent the vast majority of the first 24 hours just interviewing witnesses?
Correct.
When did you get your first actual report from either Shaw or Thrasher or Stewart about what was being found on the crime scene?
At some point, Kuykendall told me, obviously, I learned about the bullet that he had found in the basement, and I don't recall exactly. It wasn't long after he found it, because of course that was a pretty big piece of evidence. I believe after I interviewed Melody on Saturday, the last time I interviewed, it's been a long time ago, on Friday.
The 6th.
The 6th,
right.
Yes, which was my last interview with her that morning. Things started calming down a little bit, and I was able to spend some more time at the scene, finally getting to walk around and see what they were seeing.
But what I'm asking is, did Shaw sit down with you and give you a report of what they were doing?
When you say report, hand me a piece of paper, or
No,
just
it doesn't have to be
verbal?
a piece of paper. He call you up, hey, this is what's going on over here. This is what we found. This is what Thrasher found. This is what Stewart found. Did that ever happen?
That happened. I don't think it was on Friday. When I say that we were doing the walk around through the scene to release it, that was actually with Shaw and Ballard, Lieutenant Ballard.
So that was probably Saturday.
Yes.
Okay. After you interviewed basically all the witnesses in the case.
Correct.
Don't you think it would have been helpful to you have had to them been able to get you some of this information sooner than Saturday when y'all are kind of closing the scene down?
Sure, hindsight's always 20/20.
Well,
I'd like to know everything as soon as it happened, but it just didn't work out that way.
But you would have liked it.
Sure, it would have been helpful if I could have cloned myself 10 times over, and everything was feeding one brain.
Okay. Hey, why was Kuykendall back at the house? This is what I keep getting confused with, because you and him are tasked with this, and you heard him, he used the word task a lot. I wasn't tasked to do this, I was tasked to do that, and I've still been trying to figure out who was tasking who here. So why was your partner, essentially, your detective partner, going and guarding physical evidence and then going in the house and doing crime scene investigation work and not out interviewing witnesses. But you were staying on task, doing your job, interviewing witnesses, but he's over here doing all kinds of stuff.
I don't know.
I mean, did that not frustrate you a little bit?
I didn't know what was happening at the time.
Okay.
I was in my interviews.
Okay. So tell me, going into the interview, the second interview with Melody at the station,
Okay.
the fire station, I believe, or community center.
And community center.
It's
all
everything, all in one.
Yes.
In Freeholm.
Correct.
Okay. So you're out there preparing that. You explained to the jury the area you did the interviews and all these things. But what was your plan going into the interview with Melody?
To get the truth.
What was your vision of the case? You've been in on the case for 10 hours at that point. What was your thoughts?
At the time, everybody's pointing fingers at everybody, So I was going in knowing now that Gary had been shot, that we found a bullet. At this time, I didn't know about the bullet in the basement, but I knew that Gary had been shot, so that changed the outlook of the investigation. I'd already spoken with Melody once. Wanted to see what else she knew now that I could present her this new information.
Okay. What is your tactic? What would you say your tactics are generally for an interview or an interrogation?
My tactics?
Yeah.
It depends. I like to go in and try to read the people that I'm talking to. I feel like I can read people pretty well. Sometimes people need to be talked to a little more aggressively than others. Sometimes a simple conversation can accomplish the goal. So I'm pretty fluid in that.
Okay. So you seem to be, tell me if I'm wrong, but typically yours is a more conversational style. Correct?
Correct.
And we've all sat here and listened to so many hours of your interview. Never really in any of these interviews you seem to be the one that was like, Pope was brought in up in Tennessee to be confrontational, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And then in this one, as much as I guess he can be because he's always apologizing, was the confrontational one.
Yeah, I've listened to the interview. I'd agree with that.
Okay. So was that predetermined or just something that happened?
No. With which one?
Not with Pope. I think y'all determined in advance he was going to be the bad guy.
With Kuykendall?
With Kuykendall.
It wasn't predetermined. That interview happened pretty quickly after the bullet in the rib bone was found, and he and I had done so many interviews together in the past because most of our criminal investigations career we've worked together in some form or fashion, and we read each other pretty good. I know when to shut up. When he's talking, he knows when I butt in to listen and things like that.
Well, it sounded like he did a lot of talking in that interview.
He always does.
Okay. Maybe sometimes when he's under cross-examination.
He's probably going to be mad when he goes back and watches this.
But I want to get to something. So, you guys already knew essentially about her having a relationship with Rusty Barton. When did you find out about it?
Yep. Family members, I don't recall. Obviously, I think Scott had mentioned it, the name Rusty Barton. Then we eventually had found that credit card.
Which Kuykendall found, I believe.
I don't recall who.
Okay. All right, so you had heard it from family members already. You knew that Scott had said there's a missing gun and there's a Rusty Barton, right?
And the Ted Wiley, yes.
And Ted Wiley. You already knew about Ted Wiley, a guy from 10 years ago.
Right.
But, she's not over here, and the district attorney's office kind of questioned about things that she didn't bring up and things like that. You've been doing this for a long time, Hayes. People don't typically bring up extramarital relationships in interviews right away, right?
Oh, they typically don't offer the information, no.
They don't.
Right.
So that's not unusual, right?
I'd agree with that.
Okay. So, going into, it's safe to say, did you know about any extramarital relationships going into the first interview, sitting on the porch?
I don't believe I did at that time.
Okay. But you did already know about the gun
I'd heard mention of it.
going into that interview,
Correct.
within the first 30 minutes of you being on a crime scene.
Correct.
Okay. You didn't know about the affair.
I don't believe I did.
All right. But you knew about the affair by the time we get to the station that night.
Yes.
Did you know anything more, like any details about the affair? Can you remember?
I believe the statement was that she would disappear up to Tennessee, and the people that Miss Barton that she was going up there to visit and take care of, and
Martha Jane.
Martha Jane.
All right.
Martha
So
Jane
you already
Barton.
knew about Martha Jane.
Yes.
So it's safe. I mean, we've all been together now, and I keep saying that, but it's unique for me to cross-examine somebody who has sat here and had 2.5 weeks to study for the exam.
Yes.
But it's safe to say that you knew all the cast and characters that this jury knows about right now within about the first 6 hours of you being on scene.
Most of them, yes. I'd say that's fair.
The primary
yeah.
people on that picture board that the district attorney's office printed off. And you knew about it.
Yes.
Even some of them you'd say you knew about within 2 hours. The vast majority of them.
Yes.
Okay. How do you think that framed the way you thought for the rest of this case?
Knowing how many people were involved or that names were brought up?
Kind of generally what you already knew. You knew that there was a spouse and she was having an affair, and you have a son that says a gun is missing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed that has been the general theme of y'all's case since within the first hour of arriving on scene?
We were told that pretty early arriving on scene, and as we continued to investigate it, the evidence continued to point that way.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to the scene, because I want to kind of get to this point. You go back to the scene after her interviews, and Hegwood, you collected some evidence, did you not? Church. How do I get into this? Do I need gloves?
I have some.
You probably need some gloves too. We'll get some. I'll give you the shoes back. So where were you back when you went back to the house? Where were you in the house when you found this shirt?
The shirt, the master bedroom closet.
Okay. And doing a terrible job. Johnny Cochran would be upset with me putting on these gloves. All right, I got it. I'm going to do this with one glove. And Hegwood, I'm going to pull this out.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay. May I approach, Your Honor? Okay. If you could hold that up. You could open it. We've seen pictures, but sometimes I think we should look at the real things. Is that the shirt that you found? It's okay if you don't remember, but what drew your attention to this shirt?
At the time, it was a little darker back then. I think in the soot has been wiped away, but there was what appeared to be.
You think that was soot?
Mhm.
That's what you said?
That's what it looked like to me.
Okay. And was it in a... All right, there's all kinds of circles drawn on this.
Yeah, there is now.
What is this stuff? Did you notice any of this?
You know, when I pulled it out and handed it off, we all started looking at it. And, you know, I had 2 crime scene detectives there with me.
Do you remember which ones?
It was Shaw, I know, was with me because we were doing the walk through the house. And Ballard was on scene because he was called over as well. You know, big cutting, we started seeing stains that looked like they were possibly blood.
Right. Now, I got to ask you this. Did you say to... Your Honor, could you turn on the overhead, please? Yes, I'll do. I will do whatever you guys think I should do. All right. So this is the spot you're talking about right here.
Correct.
All right. Which could be any number of things. Yes?
I agree.
Dirt, you name it.
Could be.
Did you ever look over at Shaw and say, hey, Shaw, can we do a test to see if this is soot?
No.
All right. Did Shaw look over at you and say, you know, we got a really good soot test. I can check for that.
No.
Well, then how? You don't really know what this is supposed to be, right?
Well, not scientifically, I can know, you know, my guesstimate is from looking at it. Yes.
It's just a guesstimate from looking at it. But it
Sure.
could be any number of things. Right?
I agree with that.
All right. And then the blood, you know, we got cuttings and all this stuff. We got cutting of blood up here. This is the hole that was cut out. That was where the blood was found.
Yes.
And you were made aware at least later that was just Melody's blood, right? You knew that.
Yes.
Okay. You know that now.
I do now.
Okay. Did you ever ask anybody on scene what she was wearing and when she was wearing this shirt?
No.
Okay. The shoes. Where did they go? Is there another pair of shoes? There's 2 pairs. Okay, I need both. I'm sorry, Wood. I apologize. All right, these shoes right here. Did you find these? I think you found all the shoes, right?
I did.
All right. So, what did you notice about these shoes?
When I looked at the bottom of them, you could see what appeared to be a blood stain on the bottom.
All right. But they hadn't. There was 2 pairs of shoes, both roughly looking like Nikes.
Correct.
What's that?
Small table in the back. The little foldable one?
To put this stuff on?
Yeah. Bring in the, let's
Yeah, let's get it.
let's take a second.
Wait. You know what, Hayes? This is why I'm not in charge of crime scene intake.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you.
Judge makes another quick decision and doesn't have his card and can't get back in this.
Okay, you can have a seat. All right, so this is the one. Did you find these first?
I don't recall which ones I found first.
But these were not wet.
Correct. This pair was not wet.
Okay. But did you find them in the closet or in the mudroom?
They're in the closet.
All right. And nothing, to your knowledge, has been cut from these shoes, right?
Correct.
So this, I believe, is what you guys continue to be blood. And we know it's been 6 years since this, but this was the blood spot right up here.
Yes, the dark spot under the red, under your thumb, yeah.
Right here.
Yes.
Was there any blood that you knew of on these shoes?
Not that I knew of that I could see.
Okay. There's some markings up here. I just didn't know if you made those markings or you had any clue what that.
I did not make those markings.
All right. And you knew these were ultimately tested, right?
Yes,
And none of these involved Gary's blood. This is Melody's blood.
that's correct.
All right. So what did you? I mean, you were the detective. What did you think was the cause of this blood on her shoes?
I didn't know. I know, when we spoke with her, she'd broken some plates around this time frame, and you can hear in one of the interviews she pricked her finger, and she's working out on the farm. I don't know.
Did you ever go through any of the phone dumps in this case? They've been admitted through you, so did you go through them?
Some of them, yes.
Did you ever see the picture of Melody's bleeding finger?
I did eventually, yes. I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so would you think that would be maybe when she got the blood on the shoes?
Could have.
But you don't know?
I don't know.
All right. But it was her blood?
Yes.
Right. All right, now I'm going to approach with these shoes. So where did you find these?
They were all in the closet. I believe there's been photographs shown of them. She had like cubby. I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it. Like cubby holes from elementary school with shoes in them. And I just started grabbing stuff.
But you testified earlier that you felt these shoes. Now, I think I heard you say you had gloves on.
Yes.
Just like we do now. Mm-hmm. So, how could you tell they were wet?
They were cold.
Okay.
Colder than the other pair.
But did you see any water beating off, or did you squeeze it and have any water drops come out?
No.
And these shoes, were they tested? Do you know?
I don't know. I believe the spot, Sergeant Shaw on the scene had swabbed a spot on one of them and did the presumptive test, and it was negative.
Negative for blood. No, there was nothing on these shoes.
Correct.
Okay. So at this time, Your Honor, I would like to admit defense Hayes exhibits 1, which is the shirt, 2, which is the shoes with the blood, and 3, which is the just plain shoes.
Any objections? All right, they're admitted.
And this is a logical kind of stopping point for me.
If we can go for another 30 minutes
Okay.
or so, let's go ahead.
Okay.
But yeah, I knew there'd be no way you know.
I'm just trying to find stop transition points. Okay, I think we can take the gloves off. I want to go now and talk about the post begin. There's like you said, you testified earlier, and I think that was one of the most informative pieces of information about being a detective. You don't get to do any of the fun stuff, and you spend all this time typing up search warrants and keeping this case forever. That's what a detective is. It's not fun like being on TV, right?
It's any type of law enforcement. It's 90% paperwork and 10% fun, if that.
Okay. So let's start into that. So you have now interviewed a vast number of people. You have interviewed Melody. So let's go to, I think the interview started about 9 o'clock. You testified earlier too on the 6th with Melody. That's the last interview.
Correct.
Went on for 3 or 4 hours. What'd you do after that? After this long interview with Melody?
You're talking about specifically on Friday?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
They were still searching. I'd gone to the scene at some point. They were still out there searching. Probably gone home and got some more rest as well.
Okay, so you went home and got a little rest. When did you guys, I don't know if this was the point you started tasking, where was Ty Kuykendall getting his tasks from that he testified to?
I don't know.
Not from you.
Some of them may have been from me, but mostly, someone else in the early stages, the first couple of days.
Okay. So how did you guys break up responsibilities from this point forward? As far as, because it looked like Kuykendall kind of went off and maybe started checking alibis. Would you say that's right?
Mhm.
All right. How did you guys decide that?
You know, again, supervisors were directing people what to do because I wasn't there the entire time. So sometimes we made decisions and checked things on our own based off of the interviews that we had done, followed up on our own information that we'd obtained.
So you would report to Hans,
Yes.
who was here just the other day. We saw him. You would report to Hans. Who would he report to?
The next person above him would be Lieutenant Clark. Whether he was following the chain of command or not, I don't know.
You don't know. So Hans and Clark would be giving out responsibilities
Correct.
simultaneously.
Sometimes.
So who was you were talking to Hans? So where did the idea come to separate and go to Tennessee versus go check out alibis? Because you went to Tennessee next, right?
No, I think I didn't go to Tennessee until Tuesday.
You went on the 10th, I believe.
Of the next week, on the 10th. That Monday, I called, started checking alibis. I called Ted and Philip, checking on Scott's alibi.
Okay. Why did you not take Kuykendall with you to Tennessee?
At some point in the early stages of this, Kuykendall started working another homicide investigation that had come in. So Kuykendall at some point became not available to me. I don't recall if that was this instance or not, but in the early stages of it, because I remember Kuykendall wasn't very happy that he had to go do something else. He wanted to stay on this case with me. Pope was available. I know Pope. I know his style. I know he's good at what he does. I think I asked him. I was going, they're like, pick somebody, make the arrangements, get up there.
So Pope was your pick, and
Yes.
that's why he went with you.
Yes.
Y'all made that decision on Monday the 9th?
Yes, I believe so.
Started to take Kuykendall's attention?
I don't remember exactly. I just remember it was in the early stages of this.
All right, so you sit here, again, very unique. You sit here and you've watched this day after day after day after day after day. And you're the lead, you're the guy that's had to come in here and answer to all this. But at what point do you think that it would have been appropriate to do the next level of checking, i.e., looking into Chris's alibis? More than just talking to Jenna, which, did you ever listen to that phone call, by the way?
Which phone call?
The phone call that Kuykendall had with Jenna.
At some point, not in the early stages of this.
Did that not come off as weird to you?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no.
Okay. Well, so why yes and why no?
I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about the way it ended abruptly. Not everybody likes to talk to the police. Some people are busy. They got things to do.
Okay.
Some people are told by other people not to talk to the police. So, just...
Okay. But what was weird about it? Her cutting off the interview? All right. You got to answer.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
But also that somewhere in there, and you've heard this now too, and I don't know if you were aware of this at the time or if Kuykendall reported it back, that Chris slept alone that night.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You knew that. When did you know that?
I don't
That's
recall.
what I'm trying to get at.
I don't recall exactly when I found that out.
All right. So Kuykendall didn't call you, and then you didn't then say, okay, I think it would be appropriate now for you to get a phone dump on Chris so we know where he was at. Did he ever even call you and tell you this stuff?
We spoke daily. I don't recall the content of the conversations.
Okay. And did you guys ever do any kind of geofence to track where Chris was?
The only geofence we did was of the property
Oh, just of the property.
Yeah, Priscilla.
But not of Chris's phone specifically.
We did the cell phone records. I know we did some cell tower dumps. I'm not going to explain those and how they work
But
of the property.
None of that. You don't know how any of that turned out.
I know we used it to verify some of Chris's statements, and nothing showed that he came back to the property when he said he was away from there.
So far as you know.
Correct.
Okay. But you didn't have anything to do with that part.
That data was, those search warrants were being written by someone else. When the data would come in, that data would be forwarded to the intelligence unit. They would process the data or do whatever, and then, give us information back. Eventually.
But again, you heard what your partner was doing, that there was a Pokey City or Poke Bowl or whatever the name of the restaurant was near where he lived, and Kuykendall didn't go down there and even interview anybody. Do you think that was a good decision?
I don't know what was going through his head at the time, or whoever made the decision not to do that.
Okay. And did you think it was strange that nobody saw Chris from the time that he went to bed to the time that it was about 9 or 10 o'clock the next morning out at the Peachtree Road Race? That's a huge amount of time. Wouldn't you agree?
I wouldn't say it's a long amount of time, or an unusual amount of time. I don't know when everyone else woke up or...
But it's the night that you guys are contending that Gary Farris was murdered.
Okay.
The night of the 3rd into the 4th. I still think they have the Peachtree Road Race on the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
I've never made it to the end of the race, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But that was when. That's when you guys are contending, I believe, that this murder happened. Is that right?
Correct.
And Chris Farris was at the property that day.
Correct.
And he was the last adult, other than her, to see his father alive.
Correct.
And you just took him at his word on that?
No.
And Jenna says, well, I know he didn't leave, but she was asleep. And she didn't know he'd left and went out to the race. Right?
That's right. I remember hearing that.
Okay. So you're hearing all these things. And, hey, you're up in Tennessee and you're doing everything you can to get information. But your partner that you've left back down here, it just looks to me, and I'm the defense attorney and I've got you guys on cross-examination. It looks like you guys began to totally shift and laser focus and just rush through these other things. But you were focusing in on Melanie by that point and just trying to just quickly check these boxes, and we're not going to move any further down this road. Would you say that's right?
I wouldn't say we're just trying to check boxes. I'd say that we were following the evidence.
Right. But you didn't close the boxes is what I'm saying. That's where I'm at. You've got a wide open... You thought you had an alibi. There is no alibi for the hours of bedtime, which we don't really know when that was for Chris, and when his wife and Addison went out and saw him at the race. There's like 11 or 12 hours right there that you guys have got nothing on.
Phone records. We have his phone records.
You've not brought in these phone records. Any of this, you're just saying that. Okay?
Okay.
Judge,
All right.
is there a question? That was a little argumentative.
It was a little argumentative. Okay. All right. So when did Kuykendall actually leave the case? Do you know?
I don't recall.
So at that point, who was your partner? Who was helping you?
I had the ability, if I needed help, to ask, to direct. We went over the rank structure. I was a detective at the time, so I was technically a corporal rank, which outranks a deputy. We had a little bit of authority to, direct people to do things. Even as a lead detective, if you're an investigator deputy rank, they afford you a little bit of, this is more important, I need this. So if I needed someone to do something, I could ask.
Let me ask you this. I'm getting close to being finished with Kuykendall because he was no longer involved in the case. But what did you do when you found out about Joanne Ward? Did he tell you about that?
I don't recall.
You don't recall?
No.
That Gary was having his own extramarital relationships? When you were finding this information out, what were you thinking?
It didn't seem important to me at the time that Gary had affairs many, many years ago. At the time, it didn't seem like it would help me solve how he got shot.
Did you ever see any of the emails between Joanne Ward and Gary Farris, which were within the week, right there, all the way to the time of his death? So that wasn't years ago. You can see that Gary was at least attempting to have a relationship with another woman.
Did I ever see those?
Yes. Did you see that? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. So Kuykendall, I don't think he necessarily got those, but he asked these questions. You just don't remember if he told you about that, do you?
Correct.
Okay. And Angela Phillips, when did you learn about her statements?
Her initial statements or
both?
The follow-up.
Right.
I interviewed her when she called back the second time I wanted to. I can find the date in my report. I don't recall the date.
But it was later and it was you, right?
Yes.
And you're the one she disclosed this full relationship to, all the way back in the 90s. That
Yes.
she alleges that she can't remember if she had sex with him or not.
That's correct.
All right. So by that point in the interview, or in this investigation, you had essentially taken over all interviews because Kuykendall was not in the case anymore.
To a point, except for, when Sergeant Pope was helping or anyone else.
But you would agree with me that this case is probably the most complex murder case in the history of Cherokee County at this point.
During my career, since, from, we'll say 2009 when I went to Uniform Patrol until this point, yes, it's the only one I know of.
Okay. And it appears that by mid-July, and tell me if I'm wrong, that by mid-July of 2018, that you have basically been left holding the bag by yourself.
I wouldn't say that's true. People were still authoring search warrants. They were getting sent off. Things were happening in the background. As technology evolved and, we switched from old-fashioned police work to now we got all this technology and stuff. There's a lot of people involved in intelligence. You heard Bot Zone come, Kevin at the time, processing, trying to extract information, and that took some time.
But they can only do that off of the information that you gather, right?
Yes.
And so, again, for the year, if I had to say from July the 15th of 2018 to July of 2019, which is right about the time that you issued the warrant, which you're the one who signed the affidavit for the arrest warrant, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So in all that time, though, you were the guy. You didn't have a partner on the case, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Well, let me ask that question better. You didn't have a partner, correct?
Correct.
All right. Okay. So that was a lot for you to undertake on your own.
Again, if I needed help, I asked for it. There were still multiple people in the background working on the investigation.
Tell me about, as we began to transition into the interviews that you had with Chris and Scott. What led to that? For you to sit down and have an interview with both of them at the same time?
We heard it said, I think it was in the interviews, at one point the entire family stopped talking to us. After several weeks, Chris and Scott decided that wasn't what they wanted to do, so they reached out to us, and I set up a time for them to come in.
Okay. And tell me about that interview.
It was basically just them reestablishing contact. They wanted to come in and see if they could gain any information from where we were in the investigation. They decided that they weren't going to follow the orders, the request, I should say, of the attorney and the rest of the family, that they wanted to stay in touch with us and help any way they could.
So, and that, you used the right word, Detective, that they did say they wanted to gain information from you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you not find that to be a little bit suspicious?
No.
Okay. But in cases when, would you have considered them suspects at that time?
At that time?
Yes.
You know, when this thing first started, the whole world was a suspect, and then, as Mr. Fogus put it, we started shrinking the world down. So I don't recall at this time if I would have considered them suspects.
Okay.
I don't recall at which points I considered them suspects and ruled them out and ruled them back in, or
Right,
or any of
because
that.
you later ruled one of them back in, correct?
I wouldn't say that's correct.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that, but let's go back to the center. They were asking you for information about the case, yes?
They're asking if I could provide any, yes.
And you did, yes?
I don't recall. It's likely would have
What-
given them an update.
Well, let's do this, because I don't want to sit here and start replaying interviews for you. What do you remember right now about that? Interview with Chris and Scott, other than they were asking you information about the case. Did you gather anything from them?
I don't recall,
Do you recall anything about that interview?
other than what I've already stated, not the specifics now.
Okay, all right. But do you think it's bad practice to take two witnesses and put them in the room at the same time so they can hear each other talk? Are you guys not trained to not do that kind of thing?
I mean, not specifically. We sometimes we use it as a tactic to put them together and see what they'll say together, and then separate them and talk to them again later and see what they say separate. And
Okay. So at that point, you say that Chris and Scott were not suspects in your mind, and that would have been by late July. I believe it was around the 24th, somewhere in there. You interviewed them. You'd already determined they're not suspects.
like I said, I don't recall labeling them a suspect or not. I don't.
Do you ever remember in your mind? But you've used the word "shrink the world down."
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know when you shrank the world down. When did you do that?
Pretty early in the investigation.
How early?
Within the first couple of weeks.
Okay, so I'm out here now talking a couple of weeks out. So somewhere in there, would you said the first day? Or
Would
after?
it have begun shrinking the first day? Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about shrinking it down to Melody. It was after that second interview, wasn't it? You completely shrunk it down.
It was. I mean, she was the only one that we had provable lies. Early on in the investigation, you know, she was being deceptive. And
So let's talk about that.
okay.
So when you have a witness that you believe to be deceptive, which people do that in cases, right?
Do people do that?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So we've got her lying about an affair, which you charged her with that.
Yes.
Well, she admitted to the affair.
Eventually.
Essentially within the same conversation, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But you still charged her with it.
Correct.
Okay. So you did that, and so because of that, that's her being deceptive in your mind, right? About an affair.
Yes.
Okay. You would agree with me that an affair is completely proving an affair is not proving a murder.
Correct.
Okay. Can we end there, Judge?
Although I'm concerned about giving you the overnight to recharge, but I don't know that would make any difference. All right. With that, we'll break for the evening. Start back at 9 in the morning. We're gonna bring lunch in for y'all. Then we're gonna take our field trip, and then we're gonna excuse y'all for the day. Hopefully, we'll be done with this witness by the time we break for our field trip. All right. But maybe not. All right, y'all can be excused. Remember everything I've told y'all about, not looking up anything, talking to anyone, looking up anything, etc. I'll give y'all some specific instructions about the trip tomorrow. All right, y'all can be excused.